In this video, I'll show you how to spawn objects randomly within a rectangle in 2D space. As you can see, I have 2 points, point 1 and 2, and when I click, power-ups are spawned randomly within the field. To accomplish this, I just need to do 2 things. First, creating a random position within our rectangle, and secondly, spawning an object. I call randomize because that will help me make the random location different every time I run the project. And I use input is action just pressed for the left mouse button to spawn the power-ups. Let's start by getting the random position. First, I define 2 points. I use this keyword called export. Export takes these vector 2s and puts them in the inspector for the node. That way I could change them here if I wanted to. I defined these 2 points just using static numbers. But in your project, these numbers could be variables. The numbers can also change, and that will not break anything. After defining the points, we need to write a function that creates a random point within the region. I start by calling the function getARandomPoint inside. The function takes in point 1 and point 2, both of which are vector 2s, and it returns a vector 2, which will be the random point inside. First, we get random values for x and y. I use this function called randFRange. It's a method of Godot, meaning it's already built into Godot. It will take 2 numbers and get a random number within them. So I use the x value of point 1 and point 2 and the y value of point 1 and point 2 to get random numbers within those boundaries. Once I have both of those values, I can put them together into a vector 2, which then becomes a random point inside. Finally, we have the random point inside, then we return it. The return keyword changes the function into the value that we get from the function. Once I return this value, I can call this function to replace it with the value that I want. Return also has the added benefit of finishing a function, ending the function. You can use it to end a function early if you have multiple conditions in an if statement. So now I have the random point, and I can call the function to get it. The second thing we have to do is spawn the object. The first thing we need to do in order to spawn an object is have something to spawn. What I mean by that is we need a separate scene with something to spawn in it. Here I have a separate scene for my power-up. It's just an animated sprite that plays. Once I have that saved as a scene, I use an onReady variable to load it into my script. I like to think of this step as a blueprint. I create an onReady variable as a resource, and I load in the node. To get the node, I can just go to my file system and drag it into the preload function. Once we have the blueprint in this onReady variable, we can actually write our spawning function. I'll call the function spawnPowerUp. There's 2 things that we have to do with our blueprint. First, we have to create what is called an instance. So I create a variable to save the instance, and I call it PowerUpInstance. This is an actual node. Unlike the resource that acts as a blueprint, now we're taking that blueprint and we're telling Godot to actually build it into a brand new node. We use instantiate to do this. Instantiating the blueprint builds it, but we won't be able to see it because it's not in the scene tree. As you know, in Godot, things are added into this tree on the top left. Since we haven't done that, we need to do that through code. The way we do it is with addChild. So I call addChild, and I put the PowerUp instance, which is the node that we saved. So now we have to actually set the position. I create a variable for the spawn location, and I use the function that we defined earlier to get the spawn location. Since I use the return keyword, this function will replace itself with a random position. Then I take the PowerUp instance that we built, and I use setPosition to the spawn location. And that's all we need to do. And now when I click, power-ups spawn within the rectangular region. This project can be downloaded. It's in the description. I also have a tutorial for a 3D version of this, which is also a downloadable project. Let me know in the comments what other tutorials you'd like to see me make. Thank you.